You set, Jennifer? You're all set? Yep. So the time's past 9 o'clock. Welcome to Legislative Administration. Quick Pledge of Allegiance. Representative? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This will be a work session. My intention, I think, is to try to do the three bills that we have outstanding. Welcome, Representative Baxter. The three bills we have outstanding, and I think a work session on 1033 for the first 25 minutes or so till 9:30. Then if we do 15 minutes each on 1269 and 15, what's the other one? 1368, right. And then when we get to 10 o'clock, I think we'll be able to exec these three and be done our work for this half of the second year, right? Good with that? Anybody have any concerns, comments, questions? With that, I think I'll begin explaining what we've done with House Bill 1033, and I think there's enough copies for everyone that wants them, either on the table or something there. We're going to open on 1033. This was a bill. Prime sponsor was Representative Cordelli. We have from our very fine researcher, a legislative history on this. This subject matter, dealing with state and local funding of lobbying activities, was last heard in 2020 when, and the report out of the Senate from Senator Levesque, and I'll just grab one sentence out of here. She said, while the legislation has merit, the committee agreed that there would be unintended consequences. Didn't list them, unfortunately. In 2017, there were there was also the same bill prohibiting recipients of county or municipal funds from using such funds for lobbying. That too failed, but again, funnily enough, there was a sentence in there that said, although the intent of the bill is good, the language and lack of clarity make it unacceptable. Then in 2014, same thing. 2012, same thing. And all of them, the common denominator is saying, this is a good idea. So with that, some of us have taken it upon ourselves to clarify some of the language. And it seems to me from the calls and emails I've received, there's an awful lot of misinformation on this. And I think that is due to the imprecise language. Which is why I pulled out and made copies for all of you, section 15.1 and section 15.5. If everybody has a minute, can pull those out of our existing laws. The calls that I'm getting are saying if this bill passes, it's going to shut down free speech from the cities, towns, counties, and they won't be able to track all of the information for all of the bills coming through the legislature, and two, they wouldn't be able to come and talk to us about it because they would be prohibited. And I think that comes from that first line on 15.5, where it says, except as provided in paragraph 2, no recipient of a grant or appropriation of state funds may use the state funds to lobby or attempt to influence legislation, participate in a political activity, or contribute funds to any entity engaged in these activities. And I think it's being misinterpreted that that means if an employee of a community, of a town, of a state, or a county receives, they are recipients of appropriation of state funds, so they think that that means that they are prohibited. And for that, I then point you to section 15.1, and Roman 5, that talks about who is exempt to report as register and report as a lobbyist. And in that, it very clearly says that public testimony before a legislative committee is exempt, public testimony for any entity subject to RSA 91 is exempt, all the way down through letter H are all the exemptions. And that covers all of those people that think if this bill passes, they would be stopped from talking to us about legislation that affects their county, their town, their city, their anything. And I maintain it does not. And we've had discussions with our House attorney to that effect, who's also in the room. So I think that imprecise language was what needs to be fixed. We worked on that. We have an amendment to 15.5 that is one part of this issue. Good morning, representatives. The replacement for, or what we think for 15.5 is what? Where's the amendment for that? This would be amendment 2022-0805H. You see that one? That changes the language of 15.5, and I'll give you a quick second. The important part to read is it's saying, except in paragraph 2, no state grant or appropriation of funds or funds collected from property taxes shall be used to lobby or attempt to influence legislation, participate in political activity, promote or oppose directly or indirectly any legislation pending or proposed before the general court. And paragraph 2 says any entity that wishes to engage in any of the activities prohibited in paragraph 1 shall segregate the state funds and funds collected from property taxes in a separate account in such a manner that such funds are physically and financially separate from any non-state grant and appropriation or property tax funds that may be used for any of these purposes. Mere bookkeeping separation of the state funds or funds, one should say fund or funds, collected from the property taxes from other monies shall not be sufficient. So you'll see that there's a lot of the similar language. We did not change at all the exemptions in 15.1. So all of those exemptions still would exist. And I think that needs to be emphasized, that this is not stopping any free speech. The purpose of this is simply to say state funds and funds raised by local property taxes shall not be used to purchase lobbying services for under section 15 of the RSA. Everybody with me so far? The next step to this is a second amendment. And the reason for the second amendment that we're, not exactly. The reason for doing that, that other amendment is that in looking, in the conversations I've had, and maybe some other representatives can follow along with that or back me up, it seems that many places aren't even aware 15.5 exists or is the current law. So that got us wondering whether putting those prohibited activities in the lobbyist section means that cities, towns, counties never see this prohibited action. So we started thinking maybe the logical thing to do would be to put this prohibited activity section in each of the other parts of the RSAs, one dealing with schools, one dealing with county, one dealing with municipal law, so that they see the prohibited activities that pertain to their daily activity. Does that make any sense, or are there any, good morning, is there any conversation on that? The idea would be, instead of having it in lobbyists, here's my quick example. A school board that is looking through their section of RSAs wouldn't know to think to go into the lobbyist section to see what were the prohibited activities that pertain to them. Instead, we're putting that prohibited activity in their own section, so they would see, because we're really prohibiting what lobbyist activities, not prohibiting lobbyists, if that makes any sense. Right? The lobbyists aren't the ones that are being prohibited here. It's the county, it's the school, it's the state, it's the municipalities, the county and the school departments that are being prohibited from using those funds to purchase lobbying services. So that's where the two amendments are. Floor is open if anybody has conversation, comments, concerns. But that's the purpose, and that's where we are right now. I either did a spectacular job or nobody wants to know any more about it. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with that?
I still have some concerns.
Sure.
Because
That's the purpose of the work session here. We've got to.
I could be wrong, but oh, sorry. Out of practice.
Yeah.
I'm still feeling as though this is an anti-lobbyist type of bill. And I look at lobbyists as professionals who try to help us with more information on the work that we do, as opposed to grabbing for any position or any job that they feel they need to do to be negative. And I'm still having a hard time accepting that a small town, such as the towns I represent, belonging to something like the municipal association, can't just trust that association to, as part of their work, represent the towns and the jobs that we do. And what I'm still hearing from selectmen and town councilors, only in the towns I represent, is that they're concerned that with all the bills that come before us, and I think we had testimony that some 300 bills this year in one way or another affect our cities and towns, that something may be missed that is important to these communities. How can a small town with limited resources, or a city that's very, very busy and can't keep track of everything, either one having their individual circumstances but problems, how can they have a voice up here if they don't trust a group like the Municipal Association to do that as only part of the dues that we pay into them? And I need to go back to the people who have asked me to vote no, to be able to say to them, well, this is absolutely the very best way in the world to solve this. Help me, please.
Sure. Anybody?
Hi, thank you. I guess the problem that I had when I was looking at this is that the current statute, 15.5, already prohibits recipient of grant money or appropriation of state funds to use them to either influence legislation, political activity, etc. So there's already a prohibition in 15.5. That language, when I looked at this, was very confusing to me, and I hope you can hear me through this mask. The first line of that, 15.5, says, except as provided in paragraph 2, no recipient of a grant. So lobbyists are not necessarily recipients of grants. And I did not think it was a good idea to have lobbyists in this language as a recipient when we know that grants and state funds, as well as property taxes, the recipients of that money are the towns, the counties, the municipalities. So I did not want to necessarily say that a recipient, and how that is defined because it is not, is the lobbyist, because it is not the lobbyist. So that I think that there needed to be some explanation in the lobbyist statute. They don't know, the lobbyists do not know whether the funds they're getting are funds from taxpayers or from non-taxpayers. How do you fix that? You fix that by putting it in each of the sections in the statute for the cities, the counties, the towns, so that they know they have to separate them. And one thing that was done in the legislation that we're looking at is we clarified how to separate the funds by putting them in a separate account. That was never before in any of the language in the statute. So not only are we making it clear, this group of folks are the recipients, and they must separate funds that are taxpayer and that are not in separate accounts. That was added to these bills. So there's no targeting of lobbyists, but the fact that we had so many questions coming from town folks tells us that they also were confused.
Getting to your question specifically, none of this prohibits the purchasing of lobbying services.
Right.
It's strictly saying you just can't use these funds to do it. So the second part of your question, when you were talking about how does a small town do this, from testimony, we heard that the rates changed depending on the size of the town, right? So we went and started looking at where could cities and towns access funds that aren't related to local property taxes or state. And some of the examples were, they went from the ridiculous to the sublime. I mean, you could talk about dog licenses, you could talk about funds that came in from recycling of, in my town, we recycle cardboard. Those are funds that aren't coming from property taxes. I think we only had to have something like $500 in my town for our municipal association dues. So this should not be looked at as a prohibition on hiring firms to represent them, or the ability to go through and have the municipal association, not to pick on them, but you brought it up, they can assess the bills that are coming through, and it still would be possible under all of this for any of the town officials to contact their representatives, or come in themselves and testify here. That's not a prohibition on, there's nothing in any of the existing law or anything that we're proposing that prohibits any of the town employees or any of the representatives for that area to come in and testify. You can't leave the phone on and then leave the room. That doesn't work. Anyway, so that's my answer to it. Representative Baxter, or?
Thank you, Representative Hill. There's really just two things I want to comment on. One, to me, this seems like a house cleaning effort because Section 15.5.
Back up a bit. You're blowing everybody out with the microphone.
Oh, you're saying it's too
Yeah,
loud?
there you go, yeah.
Okay. Some people like it, some people don't. You can't please
They'll be
everyone.
coming in from education saying, what the heck is going on?
But to me, it seems like the intended purpose of Section 15.5 was to make sure that taxpayer funds aren't going towards lobbyist activity. And so this effort is to try to make sure that intended purpose is actually taking place, and our laws reflect that. So that's number one, that this is really just cleaning up the law that's already supposed to be in place. And then two, to the other representative's question, this bill is not going to get rid of the municipal association or anything like that. We'll still see them here lobbying us. It just won't be taxpayer funds going towards the municipal association. And I think a majority of our constituents, whether we're Republicans or Democrats, would be horrified if they found out that there are taxpayer funds going towards lobbying. Some people might not, but I think a lot of folks would be. And that's not to say the municipal association is good or bad. Everyone has a different view. But it just shouldn't be taxpayer funds that's funding lobbying. That's it.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Simon?
And just clarification on one point. Regardless, this bill wouldn't prohibit a lobbying group such as the Municipal Association from researching bills and informing towns or municipalities about bills that may affect them. They just wouldn't be able to lobby us directly on those things, right? So they could pass that information along. So even if towns and municipalities don't have the resources to track every single bill that's coming through, a lobbyist association could still research those bills and let them know, hey, this is coming up and it might affect your town. Is that correct? That's a question for clarification.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank
can
you,
answer
Mr.
that
Chairman,
first.
thank you. Nobody I've ever talked with is horrified about lobbyists coming in for cities and towns. The way the communities I represent are looking at this, and I'm looking at it still, is that, for example, when we pay our dues to the municipal association, part of the job of the municipal association is to keep track of what's going on so that they can better inform the towns. It's not a matter of the towns having one issue and the municipal association having another issue, and then lobbyists come in and fight with each other, or whatever lobbyists do. I don't think they do that, but anyway, I believe that when a community pays into their dues to the municipal association, that they're looking at the municipal association as a resource for whatever they need for information when it comes to legal issues with employees, for example, or when it comes to environmental issues that may affect communities, things like that. And just a small part of what the municipal association does is they do have a couple of lobbyists. And how does anyone, who's supposed to separate? It says mere bookkeeping separation is not going to work. How does this work? I don't understand how the separation does work now and what we expect.
Thank you, Representative. Actually, it's supposed to be occurring now,
That's what
right?
I'm
I mean,
saying, yeah.
from 15.5, it's supposed to be being done now. My community, when I talked to them, and they were one that came in and testified on the original bill, if you recall. My community sets up, my school department as well, sets up a separate account, just like they do when they have trust funds or anything. They have physically separated the funds, not just in bookkeeping, but they have created a new checking account or a new savings account, whatever you want. So that's the only separation. Representative Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am never shy from asking a dumb question, although Mr. Clerk will then say, there are no dumb questions. I don't know. Would there be any unintended consequences from this if it passes? That there are, I don't know how else to say it, but sort of like people who serve in multiple roles. So there were at one point state reps from Concord, 4 of whom were city councilors. A number of our state reps are also selectmen and et cetera, or firefighters. I realize that we're talking about funds from these entities, but recipients of those funds cross-pollinate. Is there any unintended consequence to that?
Thank you for your question. Do you want?
No, you're doing good.
Okay. So so what I would encourage, and I gave you a copy there of 15.1. So 15.1 talks about who is exempted from registering and acting as a lobbyist. And so all of those people, we believe, that you just highlighted, someone that acts as a selectman or wouldn't, they obviously don't have to register as a lobbyist, and so that this would not apply to them. They would still have the ability to attempt to influence legislation. They would have the ability to come in and testify. They would do everything that they're currently exempted from doing under 15.1. So nothing changes here. Yep.
And to
Representative.
specifically show you where it is, Roman numeral 5, and go to D. D is communication made by public official acting in official capacity.
So that nothing changes from what this bill does. It's already there for that protection. Yep. Yes,
I
Representative.
do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very basic question, and I apologize that I wasn't able to listen to the first testimony.
Yeah.
Was there a business manager that testified about the accounting implications that this would incur? So,
As far as additional costs for this? Okay.
or in terms of actual redundancies of what this has the potential to create?
Right. I think that was actually my town administrator that was here, coincidentally. And I've had further conversations with the selectmen in town. There's 2 things that I'd like to point out. They're already supposed to be doing this. Number 1. Number 2, they weren't aware that they were already supposed to be doing this. So that's what led us to the point that it's not in the right section. 15.5 deals with lobbyists, not with municipal actions. So that's part of the separate amendment. On the original bill, which I'm hoping everyone has a copy of, there was a fiscal note. And the fiscal note contacted 2 agencies to create the fiscal note. One was the Association of Counties, and the other was the Municipal Association. And if you look at under the methodology of what the costs would be, either increase or decrease, the Municipal Association stated that there would be no impact at the local level. So that was the part that I pointed out to my selectmen. I hope does that answer what you were asking? How to do it, or
Well,
the
I
cost of it,
asked if
or-
there was actually a business manager, the person that does the math and creates the budget for that town administrator and those select people.
So I think that would have been the town administrator that we were
So
talking about.
then my question is, do they have then that capacity? What is that financial impact? So you answered that through the fiscal note. My question was, was there actually someone here, or did we receive testimony from anybody about what that means in their day-to-day? Does their software allow them to do this? It's like a really basic question.
Well, it should, because
Okay.
as I just
I
said,
said they
they're
should-
doing it with trust funds and funds that are specifically
Okay.
having to be separated now. So I can't imagine that there's a software package that has to be changed, or, I don't know. Grant, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
if
right,
they're
grant
dealing with
money has
other,
to be
with
kept.
their other grants and things, and how it impacts then their audit. Like, these do have really, can have far-reaching accounting implications in overcomplicating something that they should have simply been able to already be doing.
We didn't have any
Is what I'm trying
testimony
to
from that.
really be aware of and not add the burden to, smaller towns and, okay.
I think
So
we
we think the
understand, and
answer is that it shouldn't
we had
be
no
an impact.
testimony that says
Okay.
that that's the case. So.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a committee that really works well together, and I know our chairman tries very hard to make things right
There's
and
a
better.
there's a butt coming here somewhere.
No, what, usually. So what I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, because there's a belief that these amendments may make the bill better, is there anyone we could hear from in the audience who might have seen these amendments, who might be able to tell us that this is agreeable or not? Because we're talking about something more than what we heard testimony on.
I have no idea whether there is additional information that needs to come forward. We truly are simply changing the language of the existing law to make it more clear, I believe, and we're suggesting that it goes into each separate section of the law so that it pertains to the specific groups. What was the phrase they used? The recipient groups, rather than having it affect lobbyists, because it doesn't affect lobbyists.
Okay.
So,
Follow up?
you sure?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. On our committee records, do we have the blue sheet, who was in favor and who was opposed? Do we have anything like that available?
I have only from the original online system. I don't have a blue sheet from here. We did have 21 supporting and 39 opposing from the original hearing that we had on the bill.
Okay, follow up?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. Is
And I
there,
think I heard from all 31 of the opposing, quite frankly, if you want to know.
I believe that, probably. I'm wondering if there's anyone here today who can tell us if they we heard some powerful testimony from the Association for Counties and the Municipal Association. Is there anyone here who can add to this to help those of us who are concerned?
We
Can we
can
ask?
certainly offer, sure. Does anybody have any comments that they would like to make? Maybe not. You're welcome to.
I mean, I'm happy to. Obviously, I've been listening and taking notes, and there are a variety of comments I could make.
Yeah.
I'm happy to if you would like me to.
If you would like her to. We're
I'm
in a work
thinking-
session, so that'd be fine.
Thank you.
The recordings can't pick up
Right.
somebody unless they're at the microphone.
Right, we'll get,
Yeah, if you could just take a moment with that.
sure. Would you take a seat at the table so that we can push the right red shiny button and get on the record? And introduce yourself, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Margaret Burns. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Comments today on what I've heard, and I'll try not to be
too all over the place, and just give you my initial
That would be
comments.
good. We were going to end
I-
about 15 minutes.
I
or no,
apologize. I
prior,
know it's a
so.
work session. I do appreciate you
Yep.
allowing me to come up. A few of the comments I'm concerned about. One is the idea that different types of funds can just be used to pay for different types of services. This idea that property taxes can be segregated off from other types of fees or funds that municipalities receive. It's just really important for the committee to remember that municipalities fund what they do through property taxes. There's nothing shocking about them paying for various services through the money they receive from collecting property taxes, because that is how they fund their budgets and that is how they fund what they do. I'm very concerned about the idea that they can simply use revenue from other types of transfer station to pay for a certain item, unless the statute allows for those fees to be used for that particular item. As far as the legislative history of the bill, I'll just comment that, you know, Representative Hill, you brought up the legislative history of bills like this throughout the years, and yes, there have been many bills like this throughout the years. Specifically with regard to 15.5, the section that 1033 is dealing with, when we look back at the legislative history of that bill, and I forget what year it was, but I recently read that legislative history. That legislation that created the statute we're dealing with now was very targeted on the executive branch and the state, and its purpose was very simple. It was to restrict entities that receive state funds from using state funds to then lobby the state. There was a clear issue that was recognized there about using the funds of the state to then just lobby the state. In House Bill 10, we're talking about municipalities using municipal funds to advocate or engage with the state, right? Not to lobby themselves, which was the scenario that the original legislation that created this statute was targeted at. Again, I appreciate the time. I will not hold you longer with all the bills that
Thank
you
you.
have.
Anyone else? You're welcome to make a statement or pass or whatever you'd like. I don't know if you receive what you are looking for, but we would like to move on to the other bills too.
Just where I am. Thank
Okay. From-
you.
Yep,
Actually,
sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Yeah, on second thought. Again, I think what bothers me about this is the fact that we take a chunk of money and we give it to somebody to help us in whatever ways they see fit, and we agree with them to have help with our issues. And I have a problem with us now micromanaging and saying, you can do this and you can't do that, when in fact it's all to our benefit because we pay to the municipal association. That's where I'm troubled.
I can understand your troubling. On the other side of the spectrum, however, there are a number of people, and I've heard from the other 21 here too, that, and this may be getting to Representative Baxter's point, that don't feel that the municipal association reflects their views. And so the analogy that one person brought up to me was, I wouldn't be happy if people were taking my tax, and I'm paraphrasing, taking my tax money and putting it into an account for a candidate that I didn't agree with any more than I do in this situation. So they're saying, he was actually bringing up President Trump, saying, I wouldn't be happy having my tax dollars being contributed into an account that would be the re-election for President Trump, and I expect on the other side the same thing. They were saying, they were drawing that analogy to I think that happened to be the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and saying that organization lobbies against their interests in situations as well, and they are not happy with their tax money going to those organizations that lobby against their interests with their tax money, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I think is behind all of this.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chairman. I do know that in the past, even the communities I represent or used to represent have had disagreements with positions the municipal association has taken.
Sure.
Nevertheless, the word's gotten out there that they're working with these issues, and it makes people stop and think and deal with the issues when they can't regularly come up here and testify. What I mean by that is that small towns don't have the people or the money to come up here and wait to be heard and
That's why
hope
I
to be
get
heard.
elected.
Exactly. And so this is where I feel I'm sort of between a rock and a hard place. I hope that before we vote on this, we can take a little bit of a break and think about it.
Sure, we have 2 minutes. Yeah, no, we're fine. I'm sorry?
We are voting?
I'd like to, when we get to 10 o'clock, we still have the other bills that we need to, so why don't we drop this for now?
That's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to close the work session on 10:33, and I think we're just going to jump right chronologically to 1269. And I think we're lucky enough to have an amendment and the author of the amendment in the audience. So Representative Evil, could you come up and explain what we have in front of us here? And I assume what we would have to do is have some committee member put onto this amendment, just for logistics purposes, but if you could explain what we have in front of us and the history of it would be great.
Okay.
The long history of it.
Yeah, I know. The wonderful world of study committees and commissions. Okay, for the record, my name is Karen Ebel. I represent New London and Newbury, Merrimack District 5. So I think you know the long history of HB 1269, so I won't take you through that all the time, all now. But I have an amendment here that's based in almost entirely on an amendment that Representative Sheehan and Roulard worked before on, which
That is, just let me
Yeah, for the-
interrupt for a second. It's everyone who would like to look at 2022-0782H.
Right, sorry. For the record, I'm
Yep.
discussing that amendment, but I just want to clarify that it's based on the amendment largely that two representatives on your committee were involved in. So I'm just going to walk you through it. I don't want to belabor anything, but on the other hand, it's almost simpler to do it if we just walk through the amendment. So the first part of the amendment makes changes to the section on the Discovery Center, which I gather were requested by the Discovery Center in their testimony that they gave as a follow-up to this bill. So that takes you down to, let's see, page 2, and then it's line 26. This looks like another clarifying change that came in through DHHS, so that's all fine. The part that I'm really going to focus on is starting on page 2, line 33. So the first thing to note is that the definition of study committee hasn't changed from the original bill. The definition and all of that is the same. What happened was, what was removed was our concept of a joint committee on committees to review periodically all the existing statutory commissions. So that part has been removed, so you won't see that. So jumping down, I think this is where things get a little bit different. Jumping down on page 2 to page 3, line 16, we had used, I admit it was somewhat of a clunky phrase, but it was trying to be a descriptified study committee for a statutory commission. You've changed, this changes that term to commission instead of codified study committee. But otherwise, this definition of commission is identical to the one that we had before. Then if you, so just talking a bit about page 3, line 20, this talks about a commission requirement that all commissions from here on out have to have a repeal date no later than 5 years from their creation. The thing here is, there was some, I think, discussion about whether or not this provision acted to basically kill off all existing statutory commissions that we have today. And there was, I think, a little confusion on that point. I talked, and of course, when I wrote it, I was thinking prospectively. I wasn't thinking retroactively. I had quite a discussion with our House counsel on this issue, and I also talked to OLS. And this provision doesn't act retroactively because that's just not the way we pass our laws. So unless the committee wants this to act retroactively, they would have to put in specific information. So I'm not sure what direction the committee wants in that. But I just want to assure you that the way this is written now, this is a prospective requirement. It's not repealing anything looking backward. So then the next thing I wanted to point out to the committee is if you go to line 24, page 3, this is a change to my bill. That it just says, on line 24, the legislative members of the commission shall constitute a majority of the commission. So that is a new requirement. At this point, you can have 1 or 2 members of the House or the Senate on a commission. They don't necessarily have to constitute a majority. This was a change that was in Representative Sheehan and Rouliard's bill, and if they want to explain more about that. I mean, I think, thinking back to my time as Deputy Speaker and the conversations that we had, one of the issues with commissions is sort of retaining the power for the legislators as opposed to all the other members. And so if you have a majority requirement, it does put a lot more pressure on legislative membership. I mean, that's the decision that you're making. So that if you had a 15-person commission, you'd have to have 8 members of the legislature. But I'm just pointing that out. That's for the committee's consideration. So that's new. Otherwise, I don't think that there's that much more new here that's different from what I had. I just, I have a continuing concern that we in some way make some sort of a routine review of existing statutory committees and commissions so that they just don't grow and unreviewed for years and years. But I think what we have here is a situation where this bill, if you go to page 3, line 33, it requires House and Senate committees to go ahead and update the indexes on an annual basis and provide them to all the standing committee chairs. And so I honestly think that gives Leg Admin the opportunity and, to be honest, the responsibility to look at that updated list. You'll pretty much be able to tell from the list who's meeting and who isn't. And if you see people or see groups that aren't really active, you can have them come on an ad hoc basis and review with them and make a recommendation on that basis. And I would hope Leg Admin would do that. Okay, and then the last thing that's in the amendment, page 4, just to take you through the history of the marine fisheries section. When our committee on committees was going through everything, we worked with Fish and Game, and one of the things that we recommended that majority membership on this advisory committee on marine fisheries be from the Seacoast region as opposed to requiring all of them. The bill went to the Senate. The Senate removed that requirement. And I should just say, you talked about it here at the House. You decided to stick with that recommendation in the original bill. It went to the Senate. The Senate removed it. So when I reintroduced the bill, I didn't include it in the original HB 1269. At your previous meeting, which unfortunately I was unable to attend, I understand that you decided you wanted to put this requirement back in. And my suggestion was that we try to put together some language that reflects the discussions that were going on over in the Senate. So there were a couple of things that came out of a letter that I provided to, I think, Chair Hill and Representative Sheehan and Rouliard. They were concerned that a majority of the membership, including the alternate, if we were going to go that route, be from the Seacoast region. They really were concerned that there be a requirement that everybody that's on this advisory committee have expertise in marine fisheries. I put that in here. My concern was they wanted everybody from the Seacoast region, but Seacoast region isn't defined anywhere. And so what I did was I referred to a definition of tidewater towns, which appears earlier in the RSAs. So I'm hoping that this will be acceptable going forward as a sort of a compromise position on trying to have the membership of the advisory committee come from representation other than just the tidewater towns.
Great.
So that's sort of the end of it. I talked a lot to House Counsel Cianci, and if there's clarifications that he needs to make, or the House Clerk or anybody else, go for it.
Will you take questions?
I certainly will.
Are there questions? Yes, Representative Wall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Representative, for doing this. And I want to thank all the people on both sides of the aisle who've worked so hard to bring this to where it is today. I'm particularly interested in page 3, lines 20 through about 24, 25. I think that was critical to this entire piece of legislation, and the wording is greatly improved. This is wonderful, and I thank you so much.
Okay.
That's nice to hear.
All right.
I have one item that, well, in addition to thanking you for all your work on this, it's the job that never ends.
No, it just never ends. We'll be glad when this is over.
I wanted to also make sure that the conversation about the missing section F, is that something
Okay,
that you
so
can...
the thing is, I don't know, the missing section F.
It's like Area 51.
Yeah, I know.
right?
I mean, I think the thing was, I don't even know how many of the members know about the missing section F if they didn't have Representative Sheehan's amendment, because that's where it showed up. So I don't
know.
I don't
either.
know if they do.
I've lost track.
Okay, so I know. So the reason that came up again, let's go to page 3, line 20 to 22. So the reason that came up is that there was some discussion about this section acting retroactively to repeal all statutory commissions, and if you did that, that would end up being a situation where everybody who wanted to have their terms extended would have to come in with legislation to do that. And then what happened was there was a discussion of the groups that really should be excluded from an automatic repeal if you look retroactively. And so, working with Representative Umberger, there was a list developed that became the famous Section F, that I just kept looking at it, and I looked at our definition of commission, and so that's why, you know, I finally just said, okay, I'm going back to the source. I'm going back to our House Counsel, Jim Cianci, from whence a lot of these provisions came, and I said, I'm confused on what is really a commission for purposes of this bill. And he said, well, we're focusing on things that study. And what was listed in the famous Section F was like the joint, was like JALCAR, the fiscal committee, things like that. None of those things are actually study committees. So what we did was we removed Section F from Representative Sheehan's amendment, and what you have before you is basically a replication of what you guys had done before.
Right.
But it took a long time to get there.
It did, and as it was pointed out to me, and I'd just like to throw this on the record, it came down to the definition that shows on page 3 between lines 16 and 19.
Right.
And it talked about those that are that were established, those entities that were established by the general court and codified in RSAs for the specific term to study, for a specific term of time to study and otherwise address a specific issue. And those didn't apply to
Section F, right.
those committees that were listed in Section F.
Right. And
So-
I guess the only other point to add there is if this provision is not acting retroactively, you don't have to be as concerned about excluding things from the retroactive action.
Right.
But that's, again, I'm just putting that out there for the committee. If you do want retroactive action, this provision doesn't do that. It has to be more specific.
Right. I'm good. Anyone else have further comments, questions, concerns? You're off the hook. Thank you very much.
Can you just introduce this with my name, or should I ask OLS to add a member of your committee that's?
This is fine. This is fine. We're getting the thumbs up from the House Clerk, so
Okay.
we're good. But thank you for pointing that out. I think that closes the conversation on this, unless anyone has anything else they want to discuss on 1269. Good. Closing that. Now I see Rich Lambert ready to talk about an amendment for our final. Okay. Do we have, no, we don't have that amendment as yet, correct? We do. You passed it around. That's right. Did it get past that? Here it is. Great. You're off the hook, too. It would be nice, however, if you could take the witness stand and we can talk about this amendment. Let me see. Yep. Yeah. Change in plans. Hold just a second. So here's, this is probably a little inside baseball stuff, but we didn't list this bill number in the calendar as part of the work session. So it was just pointed out to me that it would be inappropriate to bring up the work session, bring up this bill in this work session, but we can if we go into executive session. So you had asked for 5 or 10 minutes for conversation for your, and yeah, we probably are ready for a short break. So if we could take 10 minutes, good?
That's plenty.
10 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and go into executive session, and then we'll talk about this bill in the executive session. Okay? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. 10:15? 10:15, good?
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, good.
Can I meet with the Dems over here?
wrapping up the executive session, and in order to get Mr. Lambert back to work, I'm going to suggest we open the exec session on House Bill 13, what is that?
1033. Which one are you doing first?
House Bill, the ethics bill.
Ethics bill.
1368. And would you like to explain the amendment to us, please? Thank you. Yeah, we need to get it on the record. This is, for those, we actually now have a substitute we need to thank for coming in. Representative Burt is in for Representative Green, so everyone's aware. This is House Bill 1368, executive session, an act relative to recusal by members of the General Court for conflicts of interest. The prime sponsor had mentioned that an amendment was needed during testimony, and that's what we're here. We have in front of us somewhere, what was this one? It's Amendment 2022-0794H. Everyone have that?
Just to clarify, will you also make announcements if you have received any online support or oppose
Sure.
of that? Thank you.
I can do that right now. So on the online, there were 2 people in support of this and 0 opposed. Mr. Lambert, welcome to Legislative Administration. I think you need to push the button so the little red light lights up for us. There you go.
I staff the Ethics Committee as the executive administrator, and in that capacity, I can't advocate for legislation or state any sort of opinions on policy, but I can try to explain things objectively if you have any questions. I think that Chairman Gordon, Representative Gordon, explained how the bill came about and why, based on past or fairly recent complaints and some advisory opinions where it was felt that this whole issue needs to be clarified in terms of when disclosure is not enough, but recusal might be required when a legislator has a conflict of interest. And the amendment seeks to clarify some points that, aspects that needed clarification, which is what he and you discussed at the hearing. So currently there's 2 levels of conflict of interest. One you address by filling out the Declaration of Intent form, which is now every 2 years. It has all those categories. If you're in banking or real estate or an attorney, you put that information on the form. And generally that is enough to do in terms of action required to be taken unless the conflict is greater to you than other people in that group. So if there's a bill that comes along that affects you as an attorney more than other attorneys, you would then have to go and file a Declaration of Intent form and decide whether to participate or not. This would impose another level where if you have a substantially greater benefit or detriment that could occur from the bill, you would have to recuse. And that grew out of a complaint that occurred a few years ago, and I think you know about that.
I'm aware.
Yes.
And is that the sum and substance of
Yes.
the changes in this amendment?
Yes.
Would you be willing to take questions?
Yes.
Does the committee have questions? I have a couple. Representative Wall, I didn't see your, I'm sorry. Go, you go. No?
Okay, thank you very much, Rich, for putting my name on this. What, I believe, this is not a question, this is a comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
What this amendment does is it clarifies the guidelines under which, or the law actually it will be, under which a person would recuse from a particular bill that we're working on. And one example I have is from one of the committees I worked on. We had several people who owned rental properties and did not disclose that to begin with, and then acted in ways in legislation that benefited them when it came to landlord-tenant issues, and this caused some concern for several years. And what this amendment does, if you look at line 13, Roman numeral 4, it clarifies under as to when a person needs to recuse. If there's a conflict of interest and that person is not able to be objective in their voting, which is already stated in our ethics booklets that we have, they must recuse. And right now, there's a great deal of concern among a number of House members because they don't know when they should or should not recuse. So this just helps to clarify that situation. What this does, it works back to back with what's already in our booklet. And actually, if I can find it. Bear with me. Maybe, Rich, can you, I'm trying to grab in the booklet where it says a person needs to, if they benefit more than someone else from a particular issue, say if they're a landlord and they're going to benefit more than the average person, where in here, I think I've got it under a conflict of interest procedure on page 12, when a legislator becomes aware that a conflict of interest exists or may exist in the conditions set forth in paragraph 2, and it goes on, and most people don't even look at this booklet, and I think that's part of why we have a problem. They need to declare that they have an interest in this, and then they have to declare whether or not they intend to participate. If a person can't be objective, then they must recuse, and this supports that. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you.
I think it is good to more clearly spell out the language in simpler language. Legislators are busy with their own lives and with this to read a booklet, quite frankly, to see what relates to them. I've always had difficulty with this, and that's why I've always, for freshman members, it's a great resource to go and talk to Mr. Lambert and then ask him questions in advance of an issue. I have personal knowledge of that. But I also have, in relation to the general bill as it was, do you have a copy of the original bill?
I do,
As well as the amendment?
yes.
So it looked to me like there was, on page, well, I guess it's 1, line 24, there was a section starting with, has a special interest in the official legislative activity. This is replete with areas of descriptive sentences, special interest, and when it deals with whether you have a conflict of interest. Well, is that a special interest that I have? It's confusing as all get out for everyone, I think. It is for me, anyway, I'll say. But special interest is mentioned there. And then on the top of page 2, we crossed out special interest and made it financial interest. So conflict of interest means the condition in which a legislator has a financial interest or a non-financial. Does that mean special interest doesn't exist anymore, or does it exist still?
It's been redefined. In 2014 and 15, there was a study commission on the ethics laws, and they made some changes, and that was one of them. Actually, so this will go back to the language which existed from the beginning, from 1991 up till 2015, where there was a financial interest. In those days, conflict of interest was solely a financial interest. that commission talked about recusal, but didn't go there. Instead, they increased the level of conflict of interest and what you need to do about it. And they added this other category of non-financial interest, which would be if someone's on the board of directors and has a fiduciary responsibility to their entity. So that was added to it. And also there was more disclosure added in 2015 in terms of making a requirement to make a verbal disclosure. But that's when this term special interest was created, and it probably confused things further then, because it was special interest was then a conflict of interest, and conflict of interest was a financial interest or a non-financial special interest, personal interest. So this goes back to make it a little less complicated in that respect, one would hope. But
This is what I'm, I see puzzle looks out there, I see puzzle looks in here. This is what we're dealing with. It's very hard for someone who's not conversant in these areas, or it's just not on the radar of a lot of people. I think I've only heard 3 times in House session this year where someone has recused themselves from a vote. Well, law of averages tell you that that can't be right, and that tells me that there's still a problem of understanding the process. Maybe even if they understand that they have a conflict, they don't know what to do about it, I think is still the case. Some people are nodding here. To go further, I was always under the impression, or had it in my head, because I heard from, as a freshman legislator, from my mentors, that only if your situation is different than anyone else in that same category, if you're getting some added benefit that others aren't. And so I see some of that language here in the new language starting on line 10 of page 2, but it talks about when it's dealing with a business. So under and I don't see it when it's an individual. I see in the new language, and it talks on line 15, which is substantially greater than the benefit or detriment which would accrue to a business, clients, or organization in general. I don't see that phrase when we're talking specifically about, in A, where it says we're a legislator or a household member. I don't see anything that says that substantially greater than a benefit or detriment which could accrue to business. That confuses me, that we're only seemingly talking about the business relationship, not the personal relationship. Am I wrong?
I thought that maybe another few words could have been added. I should have shared this with Chairman Gordon, but if you look at toward the end of that sentence, which is a long sentence.
It is a long sentence.
Where it says, in the next to last line, the benefit or detriment which would accrue to businesses, if you added the legislator or a legislator's household member, and, or to the businesses. And this would be, the thing is, probably what needs to be described better is what constitutes a substantially greater conflict. And that could be worked out with the ethics guidelines, where, sort of like where rules, administrative rules, will be a lot more specific than a law. In this case, the guidelines are where conflicts of interest and the process of dealing with them is defined. And those are adopted by the committee and then sent to the House and Senate for approval. So you would be voting on anything like that again, in a different form. But I think that this paragraph, in fact, I know from speaking with Representative Gordon, this was intended to also include the individual, because it starts out that way. It talks about benefit or detriment to the legislator or legislator's household member. So when it gets down to the last phrase, this addition would clarify it further, perhaps.
Right, because it does talk about the legislator or legislator's household member, and then it says "or" to produce a benefit or detriment to business client. So it doesn't seem like it relates to that. I don't know how you feel, but I feel there's still work to be done, but
Yeah.
you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Rich, for all your work you're doing on this. For years, I have asked that we condense our booklet into something like what the executive branch has.
It should be on a piece of paper like this,
It should
you
be,
know?
well, like a little palm card thing. One side you can do this and the other you can't do
Yes.
that. We have not gotten to that point yet. I do know that it is hard for people to understand what we have without conferring with Rich. That most people don't even open the booklet to look at it. And if they do, they don't understand it because it requires cross-referencing in some parts. The attempt with this was to help clarify one small section, which is when a person should recuse. And that's where that little thing would be handy. You know, you can do this, but whoops, don't.
And if you do have to, then you should go here and do
Right.
this and fill out this form or something like that.
So I understand the confusion on this. I respect the work that's been done. I did not write this amendment. Chairman Gordon did it. And he did clean up the bill. The bill was weak and confusing, and this
Yes.
does clarify. I'm particularly looking at lines 13 through 16 as to when recusal is required. But I can see where some people don't understand that either. So I do support this, but I understand there are still questions.
Are there any further comments, questions, concerns? I'd be willing to accept a motion from you if you would like to, since your name is on it.
Well, okay, I would love to do ought to pass, but I think because of what I'm hearing here, that we ought to go into interim study, so I move interim study, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
I'll move second, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion to interim study, House Bill 1368. We would have to accept or reject the amendment before, because there's no such thing really, though, as interim study as amended. So interim study, we can certainly take this up. I think this is a true interim study that we're talking about, so that we would be looking it through with Representative Gordon and others.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if the committee has officially accepted the amendment yet, and because we
We have.
can't do it on an amendment.
Right,
If we
right.
set the amendment aside.
No.
And then do the interim study and include that, I think that would be the way to move forward.
I think that's what we'll do. The motion on the floor is interim study on 1368. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. Claire. Thanks.
Representative Roulard,
Yes.
Representative Osborne,
Yes.
Representative Burt,
Yes.
the clerk votes yes. Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Van de Castile,
Yes.
Representative Wallace,
Yes.
Representative Baxter,
Yes.
Representative Wall,
Yes,
Representative Richards,
Yes.
Representative Espedia,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Hill,
Yes.
13-0.
13-0.
13-0.
15-0. 13?
Yeah,
I thought you said 15.
no, 13.
Okay.
It's
13.
13, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
13-0.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that this go on the consent calendar.
Without objection, it'll be on the consent calendar.
And who's doing the first, Janet?
Janet will do the blurb. Right? Right. Thank you, Mr. Lambert. appreciate all your assistance.
You're welcome, Representative.
1269, House Bill 1269, we will take up. And this is the second to last bill we have.
13.
Still 13, right? Okay. Give us a minute here to reset, and we're good. House Bill 1269, dealing with certain legislative study committees. I would entertain a motion.
You gotta do the amendment first.
Nope. Go.
I would move up to pass.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Second by Representative Espedia.
Is this on the amendment or on the bill?
Nope, this is the bill, and now the bill is open to further amendment. I would look to Representative Simon for an for a motion on
0782.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move to pass on Amendment 2022-0782H.
0782?
Yes.
Yeah.
82H. Looking for a second on that. Representative Espedia seconds the motion. Would you like to speak to the amendment motion?
I think people have put in a lot of work that most of us aren't really interested in doing on this particular topic, although we're all grateful for the work that they've done because I think it's an important issue. And just for the sake of the amount of work that it takes to oversee these committees and to staff these committees, putting some sort of expected repeal date on them so that they don't just stay on the books kind of ineffectively, I think is the right way to go. So for those reasons, I'll move out to pass on this.
Representative Espedia?
I just echo those comments made by Representative Simon. I think this was a lot of work, and I appreciate and applaud Representative Ebel, Representative Roulard, Representative Sheehan, and everybody who put work into making this a good bill. Hopefully we can get across the finish line.
Thank you very much. Any further comments on the amendment? This is on the amendment 0782H. Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Roulard,
Yes.
Representative Osborne. Representative Burt,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Van de Castile. Representative Wallace.
Yes.
Representative Baxter,
Yes.
Representative Wall,
Yes.
Representative Richards,
Yes.
Representative Espedia,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Hill,
Yes.
13-0.
Having passed 13-0, we now have an ought to pass as amended. Is there further discussion on ought to pass as amended? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Roulard,
Yes.
Representative Osborne, Representative Burt,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Van de Castile. Representative Wallace,
Yes.
Representative Baxter,
Yes.
Representative Wall,
No.
Representative Richards. No, this is ought to pass as amended.
No, that was the bill as amended.
As amended.
Okay?
I'm sorry, Representative Richards? Yes. Representative Spedia,
Yes.
Representative Schultz,
Yes.
Representative Hill,
Yes.
12-1.
12-1,
I'm changing mine to go with the rest.
we would like to reconsider the vote on,
Yes, yes,
so that is it, just change that to yes.
yeah, it's 13-0.
It's 13-0. I would entertain consent
Yep.
without objection. House Bill 12 1269, is that what that is? Yep.
Yes.
1269 passes on consent.
And I
No,
apologize
it's-
for that,
it's
Mr. Chairman, I was busy
unanimous.
working on the previous
Oh.
one.
Oh, we'll work on the blurb.
I apologize for that, I was writing on the previous bill, thank you.
It wasn't, I thought it might have been an
Okay.
ethics issue and you're recusing yourself.
Hardly. No, I was confused.
All right. So that closes the executive session on House Bill 1269. We will open the executive session on House Bill 1033 FN and seek a motion. Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move ought to pass on HB 1033.
Representative Simon moves ought to pass on House Bill 1033. Is there a second? Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Representative Sheehan. Well-oiled machine we've got going here. The bill is open to further amendment. I would recognize Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move ought to pass on Amendment 2022-0805H.
0805H has been moved, seconded by
Second.
Representative Sheehan. Moved, Simon.
And this
Second.
vote is on the amendment or on the bill?
This is on the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Representative Simon?
Yeah, I mean, this amendment simply clarifies what we're talking about as far as the origination of the funds and makes the bill better. So I would just move ought to pass on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Simon. Any further comments? Representative Wall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that the amendment does improve the bill. But
Thank you, Representative Wall. Any further comments? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on House Bill, on the amendment to House Bill 1033, 2022-0805H.
Representative Roulard?
Yes.
Representative Osborne? Yes. Representative Burt?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Simon?
Yes.
Representative Vanda Castile? Yes. Representative Wallace?
Yes.
Representative Baxter?
Yes.
Representative Wall?
yes,
Representative Richards?
Yes.
Representative Espedia?
Yes.
Representative Schultz?
Yes.
Representative Hill?
Yes.
13-0.
13-0, the bill is, the amendment 0805H passes. Bill is open to further amendment. Representative Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move ought to pass on Amendment 2022-0743H.
Representative Simon moves ought to pass on 0743H. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Sheehan. Representative Simon, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just say that if this bill is to make it all the way through and become law, this amendment will clarify communication to the respective parties that are on the receiving end of this, what their role is, so that municipalities or towns or school boards or whatever don't inadvertently go against the law. This will clearly communicate to them in the section of the law that they pay attention to what the expectations are, so that we're not setting people up for being misinformed of their responsibilities.
Thank you, Representative Simon. Any further comments? I will just say that I think this amendment is probably the most important because it makes people aware of the existing situation as well as any future changes to prohibitions on purchasing lobbying services. And it makes them aware by putting it in the section that pertains to their own area of interest. It makes it very hard when you have to go searching for something within the RSAs, and this would put it in their own respective section, which I think is a logical move forward. With that, seeing no other comments, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Roulard?
Yes.
Representative Osborne? Representative Burt?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Simon?
Yes.
Representative Van de Castile? Representative Wallace?
Yes.
Representative Baxter?
Yes.
Representative Wall?
Yes.
Representative Richards?
Yes.
Representative Espedia?
Yes.
Representative Schultz?
Yes.
Representative Hill?
Yes.
13-0.
So now we have an ought to pass as amended on House Bill 1033. Is there any further comment on House Bill 1033 as amended? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative Roulard?
Yes.
Representative Osborne? Representative Burt?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Simon?
Yes.
Representative Van de Castile?
Yes.
Representative Wallace?
Yes.
Representative Baxter?
Yes.
Representative Wall?
No.
Representative Richards?
No.
Representative Espedia?
No.
Representative Schultz?
No.
Representative Hill?
Yes.
9-4.
Ought to pass as amended passes, 9 votes to 4. I am assuming there'll be a minority report. I will help Representative Simon with the majority committee report. You'll let me know if there's going to be a minority report?
I'll let you know.
Okay. Believe it or not, folks, that ends our work not only today, but for this half of the session. We've exec'd 26 bills, I think, in relatively short order, and I think most went on consent, which is a lovely thing.
Mr. Chair,
Anyone-
so we don't have any second committee bills?
Haven't seen any as yet.
Great.
Yep. I'm not wishing anything on anyone here, but I don't think we'll see second committee bills. Generally, this committee does not, but that doesn't necessarily hold true for the future. As far as I know, we are all set. I wanted to thank our fine substitute for the day, and tell you all that for now, I've got reports for everything. I don't have minority reports for prior bills. If you're willing, if you want to submit them, you're welcome to. If you don't, they'll go in without the minority report. Representative Wall.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for guiding us through all these bills and getting us through so amiably and so efficiently. Can you tell us what you know about our next House session?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. March 10th is the next. And March 10th, believe it or not, we will be in Reps Hall. So, for some, the mileage goes down, for some, the mileage goes back up again, who knows? But it is, March 10th, it also appears like there may be a day the following week as well, but that has not been as clearly established to my satisfaction, so I won't even start rumors that way. But that was why we needed to have things in as quickly as we did, and everyone did a great job getting everything put in here. I don't know if people are planning to speak on bills that we have that aren't on consent. I would appreciate hearing. It has to come through me anyway, so let me know. And that's about all I have for you. Anything else that comes up, everyone has my my cell number, give me a call. Now that we're not dealing with the speed limit on Winnipesaukee anymore, my phone doesn't get as clogged up, so you should be able to get through to me. But other than that, I'm all set. Anybody else have anything else? We are closed until we start seeing Senate bills that come over. Great, thanks again.
When is our next house session?
Can I see the dams for a minute?
March 10th? Here.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, bud.
Yes, anytime.
You
When I
realize,
heard it was your committee, I was like, oh, of course I would come up.
you realize that 10:33, right? I don't know if you did realize. Hold on. 10:33, hold on.
Now, why did they tell me to behave up here?
I don't know, but I had somebody come and tell me. You cannot believe
I
how,
said, Greg Hill, I'll behave.
I know.
All right, thank you.
I had people come and double check with me. Did you really need to have Representative Burke?
Yeah, they probably did.
Yeah, they did. Here, so this is the side-by-side that Jennifer put together from prior times that bill was heard. Here's this.
Representative Van de Castile?
This was your blurb.